Okay, so it's 10 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, hi everyone. As I said, welcome to this workshop on large-scale social survey. My name is Ali, and I work for the UK Data Service User Support and Training Team. I've been working here for about 5 years, and my area of expertise is in training and in particular in survey microdata. I'm here with my colleague Placide as well. Placide, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Placide Abasabanye, and I have been working for the UK Data Service for over 1 year now. Have a PhD in economics, and yeah, I've been teaching in universities for over 7 years, in research for about 9 years now. So yeah, very happy to be on this workshop with you.
Just to give a quick overview of the session today, we're going to start with an introduction to the UK Data Service and who we are. We're going to go through some key survey data, some examples of key useful surveys. Then we're going to look at some documentation and some tips for how to use the documentation to help you get the most out of the survey data. We're then going to give you a little tour of the website, because we have a new data catalogue and show you how to get to grips with that, with downloading and accessing some of the data. And then we'll signpost you to any of our training that you might find useful and some other useful resources as well. And as we said, if you have any questions, please do put these in the Q&A box in Zoom and we'll answer them throughout or later. So we're going to do another Mentimeter poll really quickly. So I just want to know whether you have used the UK Data Service before. So it's the same code as last time. If you just head to the Menti poll and pop your answer in. Okay, I'll just give one more minute for that. See, most people have answered. So yeah, we've got a few people that have, quite a few people that haven't, and a few people that are not sure. So thanks, that's absolutely great. It just gives me an idea of how familiar you all are with the UK Data Service. So what is the UK Data Service? We are a comprehensive resource funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. What this means is that we provide access to a large amount of secondary social science data. This just means that data producers and providers create this data, they pass it to us to archive and hold it, and then we make it available to researchers and users like yourselves. And we also offer support, training and guidance from the training team that Placide and I are part of. What data do we hold? We hold 6 main types of data at the UK Data Service. The one we're going to focus on today is, of course, survey microdata. But we also hold longitudinal data, so data that follows individuals over their lives to be able to track changes throughout the life course. We also hold international macrodata, so that's higher level data from different countries, allowing you to compare things such as the number of women in seats in parliaments across the world, life expectancy, poverty rates, etc. We also hold the census data, so we hold both historic census data, and then we also hold sort of more modern census data. So that's the survey from the census data from 2011 and 2021 as well. We also hold business data, so this tends to be more secure data, and we'll talk about access levels a little bit later on. But this is a more secure level access of data, and the business data just gives you information on particular businesses, their employees, and the type of work that they do, etc. And not many people know this, but we do also hold qualitative and mixed methods data. So that includes things like answers to free write longer questions from surveys, interview transcripts, there's a few video files, audio files, etc. So survey microdata is what we're going to focus on today. And survey microdata is what we call individual unit level data. So this basically means that the data is held at a level for individual people. So there's a record for each individual, or perhaps if the data was collected at a household level, for each household within the data set. Data like this is often commissioned by government departments, and the research is conducted by organisations such as the Office for National Statistics or the National Centre for Social Research, also known as NatCen. The data sets are really useful for research because they have large sample sizes, which means that they can be used to make nationally representative estimates. And there are different types of survey microdata within our collection. The data comes in two types, like I say, repeated cross-sectional. So this is what we call like a snapshot of data. So where the same or similar questionnaire is asked with a new sample of people every time. It's often repeated regularly. The point there is to repeat the questionnaire to see how things like opinions change, etc. You can also have individual cross-sectional data that's not repeated, and this is just from a single time point. And then longitudinal data, like I said, the same individuals are followed over time, either individuals that were born at a particular time point, so things like the big birth cohort studies follow that, and this allows you to explore how individuals change over time. So this is an example of what survey microdata might look like. This is what it looks like in SPSS, but it will obviously look different if you're using other software. So in this example, each column is equal to a variable. So if we look along the top here, the first variable is something to do with health. The second one is the sex of the respondent. The third one is their age category. The fourth one is their marital status, then their higher education and their ethnicity. And then each row equals one case. So we can see here for row one, the individual has good health, they're female, their age 25 to 44, they're single, their education is below a degree level, and they are white. So that's an example of how it looks within the data set when you download and open it. To access microdata from us, there are two different ways. The first one is to download the whole data set and the documentation that comes along with this. We'll demonstrate how to do this later. And this data can be downloaded in three different formats. This is SPSS, like I showed on the previous slide, data, and also tab. We also have our online platform Nestar that lets you browse the variables and the metadata for some of our open data sets. You can do simple data analysis within this, so you can cross-tabulate variables to explore patterns, export some tables and graphs that you can create using it, and you can download a subset of data from there. Just to note that Nestar it is still working and it can be really useful for exploring that data, but it isn't currently being maintained because we are working on a new tool to replace it. So just to flag that for reference. When it comes to the topics that we cover in survey data, there are lots of different topics. These are the key ones and some of the surveys that can be used to explore them. So for employment and work, we have things like the labour force survey and the annual population survey. Those are two linked surveys, and they survey people's working hours across the whole country. The European Working Conditions Survey is a really interesting survey that allows you to compare across different European countries. For health, there's the Health Survey for England and the Scottish Health Survey. And then there's also some really interesting diet and nutrition changes, surveys that track diet and nutrition changes as well. For family finance, there's the Family Resources Survey and the Living Cost and Food Survey. These are super interesting if you're wanting to explore things like the impact of the cost of living crisis and people's availability of resources and funding and where their income's coming from. For crime, you have the crime surveys. There's the Scottish Crime and Justice Survey and also the Crime Survey for England and Wales. The Crime Survey for England and Wales is a really valuable resource because this survey is independent from police statistics. So this survey surveys people who've been a victim of crime in the past year and asks them about their experiences of that, but this provides data that's separate from police resources. So that can be a really useful survey if you're wanting to explore crime. There's lots of attitudes and opinions surveys with new questions being added to them to reflect current opinions or topics. So the British Social Attitudes Survey is a really interesting one, and they added questions on Brexit when that was going on in 2016. And then there are surveys on housing and the local environment. The English Housing Survey is really interesting because it has an additional surveyor's report where the information collector actually goes in and reviews the state of the house that the individual is living in. So that can be really useful for information on issues with rental properties or houses or anything like that. So we're now going to jump back to Mentimeter, and I would just like to know, which of these variables do you think we hold in our data set? So I've given you a bit of a clue there. So if I just navigate back to Mentimeter, which of these variables do you think we hold within our data sets? So total daily expenditure for 2 weeks, the surveyor's report on properties, which I may or may not just have mentioned, blood samples, information on the number of sexual partners, and COVID-19 test results. Okay, so that was a little bit of a trick question. We do actually hold all of these variables within various surveys within our data sets. So the Living Costs and Food Survey is the one that covers expenditure and food. The English Housing Survey obviously holds the report on housing conditions. The Health Survey for England is really useful because it allows, it accompanies a nurse visit. It has an accompanying nurse visit where they take blood and saliva tests, so that measures things like cholesterol. The weight measurements within the Health Survey for England are a really useful measure of obesity, particularly in young people. The National Survey of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles does ask those more personal and detailed questions about sexual experiences, behaviours and views. And the Understanding Society data set had particular COVID waves with information on test results, vaccination, social distancing, how that affected people's employment, etc. So in a minute, I'm going to hand over to Placide to give you an intro in more detail to some of those surveys. But I've got one more Menti poll just to illustrate to you an example of how the data could be used. So this question is from the British Social Attitudes Survey, which has been running since 1983. In 1984, the survey asked people how much they agreed with the statement, a man's job is to earn money and a woman's job is to look after the home and family. In 1984, 43% of people asked agreed with this statement. What percentage do you think agreed when the same question was asked in 2022? So do you think 9% agreed, 18%, 28%, or 38%? So if you pop your answers in there. Okay, so give it one more minute. So I can see that the majority of, or that most people think that it was around 18%. I'm actually really pleased to say that it was only 9% of people agreed with this in 2022. I'm yet to look to see if this question is in some of the later data sets, but there definitely are continuing questions on things like gender. So if you were interested in exploring that in some of the more recent data sets, that's definitely something that I recommend you doing. So I'm going to hand over to Placide now, who's going to go more in depth into some particular survey examples. So bear with us while we swap over.
Thank you very much, Ali. Thank you. I will continue by going into more details on a few examples of surveys. Here, I will just focus on 4 of them, but my colleague Ali has already mentioned many more, especially when she talked about key topics and the type of information collected in UK surveys. So let's start with the British Social Attitude Survey. As my colleague has already mentioned, we also call it BSA survey in short. So this is one of the most well-known sources for tracking public attitude in Britain and evaluating patterns of continuity and change over time. It has run in most years since 1983, as my colleague mentioned, and it collects responses from around 3,000 people every year. It is a repeated cross-sectional survey, which means that although some people might participate more than once, it is not designed to follow the same respondent over time. What it does is it gives us a regular snapshot of social and political attitude across Britain. The survey includes a set of core questions covering backgrounds and classificatory information. In addition to this, it also includes modules on a range of social, economic, political, and moral issues. Some of these modules appear frequently, while others are asked less often, depending on current events and research priorities. My colleague mentioned how this was the case around the Brexit referendum, when this survey included an increased number of questions on attitude about migration. Also, over time, we saw an increased number of questions on gender equality. A second key survey is the labor force survey. This is the main official source of data about the UK labor market. It's produced by the ONS, Office for National Statistics. It measures employment, unemployment, and a range of topics related to economic activity. So this includes occupation, training, hours of work, personal and household characteristics for people aged 16 and over. It has run quarterly since 1992. It used to run annually before, but since 1992, it ran quarterly, and roughly 60,000 people are interviewed during each quarter. The dataset is available at the individual level and the household level. There are also longitudinal versions that link responses across 5 consecutive quarters, allowing researchers to examine short-term changes for the same individuals. And this is because these individuals are interviewed over 5 consecutive quarters. In this survey, sampling is conducted through random selection based on postcode address files. Now, a note of caution, because of its sample size and complexity and importance, you will need to really make good use of documentation to analyze the labor force survey. A third important data source is the health survey for England. This survey collects data on general health, long-standing illness, smoking, alcohol consumption, and other health-related issues. It has run annually since 1991, and it now gathers around 13,000 interviews per year. Just to note that earlier samples were sometimes larger before budget reductions that affected several national surveys. One of the distinctive features of the health survey for England is that it includes physical measurements and the analysis of blood samples, which enables detailed monitoring of population health. For example, and that's the screenshot we have here. This is from the report from the 2018 survey, and it includes, as you can see, information about blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, and other public health indicators. So this really makes the survey valuable for both academic research and for public health planning. Let's take a last example here, the events survey. Now, this is the evidence for Equality National Survey that was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic and was funded by the EISRC, the Economic and Social Research Council. It collected more than 14,000 responses and provides a unique source of evidence on smaller ethnic groups whose experiences are often difficult to examine using standard survey samples. Data were collected on physical and mental health, on well-being, financial security, employment, experiences of racism during the COVID and so on. The survey received media attention and contributed to public discussion around inequality and COVID-19. Traditional probability sampling normally often struggles to represent smaller minority groups. So this survey addressed the problem through a combination of web-based recruitment, support from voluntary and community organizations, and some statistical method designed to make the non-probabilistic sample nationally representative. There is, you have the link down there, a free online book that summarizes the main findings of this survey. So let's now take a few minutes and talk about documentation. Survey documentation is essential whenever we are using data that we didn't collect ourselves, and most of the time this is the case. So documentation helps us understand how the survey was designed, how individuals were sampled, how variables were created, what derived variables are included, and how weighting should be applied. The documentation also explains how the survey was funded, how the data might be linked to other related datasets. Here we have an example screenshot of the British Social Attitude Survey from last year. And so when you view a survey page from the UK Data Service Catalogue, you can access all this documentation, user guides, questionnaires, participant information, and a dictionary, which are essential sources for correct and meaningful use of the data. Sometimes you have many more documentation. These are essential ones. Let's talk about questionnaires. They are important part of survey documentations because they show exactly what questions were asked, which variable names correspond to each questions, and how routing works. Now, routing refers to the conditions that determine whether a question is asked and whom it is presented, and that type of information. Some questionnaires include timestamps indicating when a respondent began and completed the survey. For example, here, I don't know if you can read much, it's too small, but this is a screenshot from the questions from Understanding Society. And this was asking about long COVID symptoms. And you can see that it includes additional information about the question. So if we want to understand or reproduce an analysis from other researchers, checking questionnaire is often necessary to know exactly how a concept was measured. The resources section, as you can see here, if you open a survey page, this will provide links to related case studies that demonstrate, for example, how other researchers have used the dataset. It might also include publications, teaching materials, links to the producer's website. Here we have an example from the Living Costs and Food Survey, the 2023-2024. So these resources are very useful, especially for people who are new to the dataset, who want to find examples of how others have used the data before. Let's end this part of the presentation by talking about survey weights. So I would like to say just a few words here. Survey dataset contain weighting variables, and this is mainly to ensure that the sample better represent the overall population. So without weights, survey result can be misleading, especially if some demographic groups are overrepresented or underrepresented. And in most cases, it's often like that. So to create weights, survey data are compared with population characteristics from sources such as the census, and common weighting factors include age, sex, social class, and for some surveys, it will also include ethnicity. Most statistical software packages make it really easy and straightforward to apply weights. Also, you will need to look at documentation that explain which weight variable should be used for each type of analysis. For people who are new to weighting, the UK Data Service provides an introductory video. We have guides for SPSS, STATA, and R, as well as online training materials. So if you would like to find out more on this, you can check our data skills modules in the Learning Hub on our website. That's it for me. So Ali, over to you.
Thanks, Placide. So I'm now going to give a quick introduction to how you can find and access some of this data from the UK Data Service. So I'm going to run you through some information about access conditions, and then I'm going to give you a demo of the catalogue and website and kind of go through the process of what it's like to download this data. So at the UK Data Service, data is available under 3 different access conditions, or access levels as we call them. The first level is what we call open access. This data is available with very few restrictions. You do not need to register to access this data. You can simply go to the web page, which I'll show you in a minute, go to the catalogue page and download it. These are data sets that contain less disclosive information or perhaps fewer variables. They're often made from larger survey data that's been scaled down to meet the data producer's requirements to make this data open access. And then you're simply able to download and use it. We have also a fair few teaching data sets that are available under this level. So it's very easy for students to download and access this data without having to register for the UK Data Service. And a few of our training materials use this open data as well, so everyone can get started with it very easily. The next level up we call our safeguarded data. The majority of our data is what we call safeguarded, and that means that it's available under our end user license. This means that you need to register with the UK Data Service to download it and agree to the access conditions. You can either register using your university or higher education login, so something like Shibboleth or anything with kind of federated access, or you can request a UK Data Archive username. We'll send this to you and then you'll be able to log in to access the data. The data on this level may also have additional access conditions. We call this special license data. This is data that might have something additional that you need to tick to agree to. So the end user license covers things like you promise not to share the data on, you promise not to try and identify participants. Special license might be something like, I promise not to use this for commercial use, or I agree not to use this for commercial projects, etc. There are some data sets that you are allowed to use for commercial use, but they may come with a charge. So it's worth exploring all the access conditions on the page, and I will demonstrate that in just a minute. But the majority of our data is available under that, and it's really easy to register to access that data. The final level of data, sorry, I can see we've just got a question in the chat, which I'll answer. It says, do NHS researchers have access via Open Athens? Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I would encourage you to try and register. It's not just, it's commonly universities, but you can log in and register through any organisation. There's a drop-down menu, so if you try your organisation and it doesn't work, you'll then be offered the option to get a UK Data Archive username. And if you have any issues with that, the collection team will be able to, the research team will be able to help with that. Independent researchers as well, yeah, I think that would be through the UK Data Archive username, but everyone should be able to register somehow, either through their organisation or through the username. And the access team are super helpful, and there's specific ways to do that. I will demonstrate actually how to register in just a sec, because we've got time and I think it might be useful for everyone. So back to the final level, this is what we called controlled data. In order to access this data, you need to complete what we call our secure lab training or our secure researcher training. This is training that allows you to access secure data. This training is quite useful as well, because it also covers accessing data through things like the Office for National Statistics Secure Research Service. So if you complete our training, you're also able to access data through that. Once you've completed that training, the data can only be accessed through a secure access agreement and through a physical or virtual secure environment. So we have our virtual secure lab, we have our actual secure lab at the University of Essex, and they're also now that we brought in during the pandemic across universities and various locations, sort of mini secure lab hubs that you can go in and use the data there as well. But applications for use of this data must be checked and agreed to, and also outputs from this data are also checked because it contains those most secure, high-level, possibly disclosive variables. So I'm now going to give a demo of the new catalogue and also sort of how you can find the information on accessing and downloading some of that data. So this is the UK Data Service homepage. I know some of you are familiar with it as you have used it before. Some of you are completely new to it. So it's ukdataservice.ac.uk is our website. I want to start with our data catalogue. This is our new data catalogue page. So even if you have used the UK Data Service before, this might look new to you. We have our main data catalogue search, our theme pages, and then some additional useful data resources down here. So starting with the catalogue, I'm going to just type in the health survey as an example and click search. And this will bring up the results for this catalogue. I can see that Jill's popped the link to the catalogue in the chat as well. Great. Do have an explore of that if you want to explore along with me while I'm looking at this. So this is the main catalogue page. We can see that I've typed in the health survey and it's given me the results for the health survey for England. Majority of the time, you'll probably be using the studies tab. This is where the main studies appear. You can filter by different access levels. So if you only want that open data, that safeguarded data, or that controlled data, like I was talking about. You can refine the date range if you're after more recent data, or perhaps you want to look at a particular time period where certain, I don't know, political things went on, or where there were certain changes, for example, to the health system. You can also choose geographical data. So this is probably pulling in health data from other areas as well. You can choose the data type that you would like. So census data, cross-national data if you want some of the historical data. You can also filter by topic. So we've got various topics coded in here as well. If you're trying to narrow down a topic you might be interested in. And then you can also choose the series. And this is where I'll come up to this series tab. So to explain theories, a lot of surveys that are repeated, a lot of surveys in our collection are repeated, things like the British Social Attitude Survey and the Health Survey. And in order to make them easier to access, we group them as series. So all surveys that are repeated, most if not all surveys that are repeated, have a series page. So this is the one for the Health Survey for England, gives information about the Health Survey for England in general, resources that are linked to it, frequently asked questions about the series. And then if you go to access data, you can see all the various years of the Health Survey for England that are available. So that can be useful if you're looking for particular years of a survey and you're not sure if there's data available for that year. Something else we have available is reshare. Reshare is data that's available from independent or independent researchers or researchers that have deposited their data with us. Anyone who's funded by the Economic and Social Research Council for a project is, I think, required to deposit their data with us here. It has slightly different access conditions, often dependent on what the individual researcher has specified. Sometimes you might need to request access, or sometimes the data might be available. These tend to be data creators that are not those big organizations, but instead smaller groups of researchers. But that data is also available as well. And then finally, in the new catalogue, we have the variables tab. This tab allows you to search for variables that are within our data sets. So if I search, maybe I'll search disability, and we can see that these are variables, have you got a disability? And this is within the teaching STEM education in Rwanda data set, but you could filter this to find variables that are within the relevant data sets that you're interested in. This information is also all available in the documentation, but this can be a quicker way to search for variables that you might be interested in. So let's say that you found, let's go back to the health survey because that makes it easier. Let's say that you found a data set that you're interested in using. So I'm going to choose, let's see, which version do I want? Let's choose the Scottish Health Survey. So you click on the survey to be taken to what we call its catalogue page. Here you can see that there's the option to explore the data using Nestar. That's the online exploration platform that I flagged earlier. And then you can also add the data to your account. That is what you'll have to do if the data is anything other than open. If the data is open, which I'll just show you now, you are given the option to download the data. So because I think this is boundary data, it comes up with other. But if it was one of our surveys, let's see, let's find the open option. The opinions and lifestyle survey, you can see here that then you're given the option to download the data directly in whatever format is most relevant for your software. So let's go to demonstrate how to register now. So you start by clicking the login button at the top right up here, and then you type the name of your organization. So for me, obviously, I always use the University of Manchester. And if the organization isn't listed, you can tick that, and then you can request a username. This will be sent to you from the Access team, and then you can sign in using the UK Data Archive provider information, but it will take you all the way through to the same place. So select your organization, and then you'll go through, your Shibboleth or your authentication or whatever you normally use, or you can register using this. Secure Lab's slightly different, but you'll be given all that information if you're logging in to Secure Lab. So let's go back to our Find Data. If you click the Find Data tab and then go to Browse and Access Data, that's what will take you to this page. So we want to use the Family Resources Survey. If you click Add to your account, it will add the data to your account, and then you can follow through various steps. It's very easy to just click on the data set and then to download it. The documentation Placide was talking about is available here. This example has lots of documentation. Not all data sets have this much documentation. The Family Resources Survey is quite detailed. Its documentation comes in a lot of Excel files. But this is where you can download the documentation from as well. Also, just to flag, the Learning Hub is where all of our training information starts. So you can find information here if you're new to using data, if you're a student using data, or you're teaching with data, information on particular topics like census, survey data, and just to flag our data skills modules as well. These are to help you get to grips with key data types. So you can use things, you can select various ones such as survey data to get you started with that. There's also longitudinal data, aggregate data, and then there are a few themed modules. So if you're interested in learning how to use R, you can have a go at exploring the crime surveys with R. We've got one that introduces the BSA and also one that introduces the Family Resources Survey as well. There's also some on managing data if you're collecting your own research as well. I can see we've had a question in the chat and I'm going to answer it now. There's actually a couple. So certification for completing the trainings. It's not currently certification for the data skills modules. They do allow you to download a certificate at the end once you've completed them, but it's not a sort of registered official level of certification at this moment. That's something that we're looking into for the future. In terms of attending events, I think I'm right in saying, Jill, please correct me if I'm wrong, that we can, if you're required to attend a training event like this one as part of a course or whatever, we can sort of give you some information or some confirmation that you attended this if needed.
Yes, that's right. I can send you a certificate of attendance if you request one.
Thanks, Jill. That's great. So yeah, if anyone needs certification that they've attended this event, please let Jill know. Thanks, Jill. We've also had a question about license conditions and appropriate citations. So yes, I did say I was going to flag that and I haven't. So good spot, Carl. Thank you for that. So if I go back to one of these data sets, under the details tab, you can see that access level, it tells you the level of the data set right there. So it's really clear. Quite often, if it's open, it will be in the title, or if it's secure access, it will be in the title name. The safeguarded data sets don't tend to have it in the title, but the best way to check is go to the catalogue page and then highlight where it, or then have a look where it says access. In terms of citation, we have each catalogue page has a citation tool. Please do cite the data. It's really useful for us to see where the data has been used, etc. And we really do encourage you to do that. And we try to make it as easy as possible with the citation tool on each catalogue page. So you can simply select what format you need the data in, copy it. You can also export it as a CSL or EndNote file as well. And for particular sort of detailed questions about use of the data, you can also have a look in the end user license when you sign up as well. Okay, so that sort of covered the little demo of the site. I'll just switch back to run through my final slides about other resources, and then I know that we've got some questions in the Q&A box that Placide and I will then be able to answer at the end too. So other resources and training and support with data. So I gave a quick demo there of the Learning Hub and some of the kind of training available, but we cover three main areas in our online training. We cover training on things like accessing and using the data in our catalogue, so training on things like survey and longitudinal data. Placide's just finished working on a module about using the census data. Hopefully that will be available soon, and that will help get to grips with the census data. We provide training for the international databases you can access, and also training on using the qualitative data too. We also have information on research data management, so that's the ethics of using the data, planning to share the data. If you're doing your own research or collecting your, if you're doing your own surveys and collecting your own data, There's information there on ethics, how you can make your data available to be shared widely, and make it available in reshare, how you can plan to share it, and how you can anonymize it if you want to share your data wider. And also we have our computational social science team, who's within the training team here at Manchester, where Placide and I are based. They offer training on what we call newer forms of data, so things like web scraping data, coding, so things like using Python to do social network analysis, newer methods of analysis like sort of natural language processing, and using text data. So do explore some of their research as well. They do some really interesting newer forms of analysing data as well, and all that information is available on the relevant section of the Learning Hub page, and also the events page if you want to look up any upcoming events. So yeah, as I said, for particular training for survey data, we have the survey data page on the Learning Hub, which I just demonstrated, the data skills modules as well. Just a bit more info on those. They are hosted in a platform called Rise, where you can go through them in this online learning platform. There are videos, there are quizzes to test your knowledge, and sort of little interactive things to click to kind of understand it all a bit further. Oh yes, Jill's just someone just asked a question. Yes, all of our training is completely free and open access to everyone to access through the website. So there's no charge for our training at all. We also have what we call our quick start guides. These are guides to get to grips with particular popular data sets. So we have some on the British Social Attitudes Survey. It gives you an overview of the topics, some statistics based on the data and the key features of the data. So that's a good way to get started exploring survey data and some of the most popular or most used surveys if you want to get to grips with those. We also have our YouTube channel, like I said. This covers past workshops. It also contains tutorials, things like how to use data within SPSS and R, how to weight it, how to use longitudinal data, our longer kind of training series. So the computational social science team have one on mapping crime data, for example, that's all of the whole course is available there for you to access and explore as well. And of course, the training and events page there, which I didn't show, but it's the last button on the top sort of first section of the top bar. And that's where you can find all of our upcoming events as well. If you need any support at all with the data, because it is a lot to get to grips with sometimes, finding which data format to use, thinking about the documentation, which year of the survey is most suitable for your research, how do you register, how do you cite the data, etc. Please do start with our help pages. They're just on the right up here, accessible from the home page. Here you can find our frequently asked questions, so have an explore around those if there's anything in particular you're stuck on. And if you can't find the answer you need, or you have a question that's a little bit more detailed, so perhaps which weighting variable should I use in this data set? I was expecting this variable to be in the data set from the documentation and I can't find it. Is it in this version of the data, or is it in the secure data, etc.? You can contact us through our help desk. It'll come through to myself or another one of our colleagues who will be able to look into the data in a little bit more detail for you to help find the answer that you're looking for. And if you can't find it, we will contact the data producers and try and find the answer for you as well. You can also use the help desk for queries around like training, also around if you want to deposit your own data within Reshare, and also if you have any sort of tech issues with registering or accessing the data. Here's how you can get connected to us. So we have our website, obviously, you can contact us through there. There's a GIF mail that you can sign up to, and this will give you the information on our latest events and all of our news from the UK Data Service. We have a Blue Sky now, and obviously the YouTube as well. The slides and materials will be available on the website, and as we said, you can catch up with the recording on our YouTube channel. Some upcoming events that I'd like to flag is if you are interested in using longitudinal survey data, we have another one of these webinars, but that's focused more on longitudinal data, upcoming soon. Do have a look on the event page. We have another version of the Safe Researcher training, which is what's required to access Secure Lab. That runs frequently, but do have a look if you're interested in accessing secure data. We've got some information on anonymization techniques, research data. If you want a little bit more information on the finding and accessing data, a bit more on the process of actually downloading it, etc., and more information about the access requirements, one of our teams is running the UK Data Service Essentials. And then we have 3 more sort of data in the spotlight events. So if you're interested in the time series data banks, perhaps you're interested in the qualitative or mixed methods data, or the census and population study data. We also have the Code Anxiety Club, which is something that is run by the computational social science team. The next one I think will be running in January, but do keep an eye out for that. They just take you through the basics of coding. You can code along with them, and they share the resources for getting to grips with coding and programming if that's something you've never done before. And finally, we have our computational social science, our survey data, and our secure lab drop-ins. I really do encourage you to attend these if you have any particular questions about any of these areas. So I run the survey data one with a colleague of mine, Pierre, and we'll be able to answer your questions about survey data. So it's just attend for as long as you like, and we can answer your questions and others' questions who attend. We can help with things like which data set might be most relevant for a project. We can signpost you to training on particular areas if that's what you're stuck on. And yeah, if you have any questions at all about survey data or your research, do feel free to attend that. The computational social science one is the same, but for computational social science projects, discussed with others who are doing similar work. And the Secure Lab one is for queries about Secure Lab as well. You can find all of those on the event page. Okay, I think that's all questions covered. If anyone has any more, do feel free to pop them in. If not, I will just share our contact information. And thank you all for attending this session today. Do let us know, like I say, through the help pages if you have any more questions. And I hope you can all find some survey data that's useful for your projects. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.